We got Bobby Ryan, and I'll tell you what, this is an absolute treat. And my brother, by the way, wants me to say hello to you. I'm going to give him a little airtime here on the show. But Jeff said he absolutely enjoyed playing with you when you were a young kid coming up through the ranks. So he wanted me to make sure I said hello.
I'm glad, man. I haven't seen or heard from him in a while, but fuck, if I had a webcam for like a 24-hour 7 access for one guy I ever played with, it might be him. Like just to check in on see what Petey's doing. So give him my best. I haven't talked to him in a while. He was one of my favorites. It's a very small window, but we had a blast.
Yeah, no, he said that. And did he ever skate on the carpet for you guys? Did you ever see him skate? No,
I can't say no. I wasn't there. It was such a weird year for me because I was up and down all the time. And then I wasn't really around until we got to that long playoff run, which we went through, and we ended up losing to Wilkes-Barre. But
that's right.
We were playing pretty serious hockey at that point, so he was on his best behavior. But we had a great run, and I wish I had played with him a little more in the regular season to see some of the antics that I apparently missed out on.
So Riv, Jeff,
and what year was that?
That was like 08, 09.
07, 08.
07, 08 it was.
So that's
right.
when you got called up from Owen Sound, from the OHL. Is that what you're talking about?
No, that would have been like 05, 06. This was my first year full pro. And I actually got to know PD a little bit before that. I got called up to Portland, and we went on one run there.
Okay.
And that he was a bigger part of the team then. The year that my first year pro, 07, 08, he had some injuries and he was kind of in and out. He was kind of winding down. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was kind of winding down the career.
Yeah.
It ended up being Eric Weinrich's last year of hockey, and I came down from Anaheim for the long playoff run. And 07, we had a blast, man.
Weinrich would kill me if he heard me tell this story, but he wasn't playing that series against Wilkes-Barre, and I drove down because I didn't know how much longer my brother wanted to play over here. I think he was going to try to go to Europe. Then he ended up retiring and getting into medical device sales. But I was drinking back then, and I remember Weinrich wasn't playing because he had been hurt or something like that. So he and I, we hung out, and man, he is one of the single great. I hung out with him one time in my life. And Eric Weinrich is probably one of the single greatest, coolest guys I've ever.
Do you know that he was my first defense partner in the NHL?
You know what he said? I asked him to come on our pod.
He's the hairiest man.
Tell Riv to go fuck himself.
Bullshit. Dude, he's the only defenseman that I've ever played with that there was two things. He said, Rivs, you're an offensive defenseman. That's the first time someone ever told me that in the NHL. Okay. He's like, just go. Every time you get a chance, just get up the ice. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, this is great. Like back to the old junior days where I was appreciated. The other thing he says to me, he's like, Rips, he goes, this is how we're going to play this. He goes, when they come down on us and they dump it in your corner, he goes, I want you to turn and I want you to go and get it. But he goes, when they dump it in my corner, he goes, you're going to go get the puck in that corner too.
That's right.
And I'm just like, all right.
It's a smart guy.
Such an old man move, eh?
Yeah.
I remember Chris Pronger and Kent Huskins were defensive partners at one point, and we were in morning skate, and I was a young guy cutting my teeth, so you do the extra, and Kent Huskins was doing it. Chris Pronger skates by, goes, you're skating awfully hard for a guy that's got to work both corners tonight, pal. Like he just said it so casually. I was like, Husky, you got to get off, man. You can't be out here anymore. It was such a great line.
I know those extra skates all so well. So you're in Idaho right now, and you're there for 12 hours, and you're making time for us. We'll only keep you for 3 or 4 of those 12 hours. But no,
fair enough.
Bobby, greatly appreciate you willing to come on with us. You have an unbelievable life story. You have a great hockey career. You have an unbelievable life story. But before we get into like sobriety and your first game back and your NHL career and all this stuff, what are you doing right now? Can we talk about the potential of what could happen in February? Or are we not allowed to talk about that yet? I can edit this out too. I can edit it all out.
Yeah,
so
no. Team USA decided to go a different route, so I won't be going. Had been training and planning like I was. Are you guys frozen there? Sorry. Okay.
Nope.
No. I thought I was going. I kind of thought maybe there was a potential, and there was. I was in the conversation to go, but I think in 2018 when the NHL players didn't go, they had taken quite a few guys that weren't playing hockey in the same position I'm in, and those were the guys that didn't quite, I guess, pan out for what they were planning to do. So I just got the call an hour ago. So now I'm not too sure what's next. I'm in the crosshairs right now and trying to look down, trying to look forward and see what's going on now. The taxi squads are back, so there might be an opportunity to play in that regard. But yeah.
So you're staying ready. You're staying ready to try to still play.
Yeah. I didn't right out of the gate. I kind of got to a point where I was like, and I think we've all been at that place where you're just trying to decide what's next for you and your family. And you guys have been through it. I'm going through it right now. And now you get to the tougher questions of, is it worth it? How long are you willing to sprint when you have no clue what the distance is, right? So
yeah,
I'm doing all that right now, but staying ready as of now.
Has there been any thought about maybe going over to play in Europe? That was something that for me, like I played, I played a long time in the National Hockey League, but I don't have any regrets, all the good, the bad, and the ugly that happened with myself. But I envy those guys that had the opportunity to go over and play in Europe, whether it was in Sweden, Finland, Russia, Switzerland, even Italy, the Italian league. I just think that it would be something that would be interesting. I always felt like I wanted to do that. Do you have any desire to go over to Europe and play?
Man, if you asked me before kids, like it was 100% guaranteed that I would go. Got a 5 and a 3-year-old COVID that really kind of threw things askew, right? Like they went to school on Tuesday. And that was the first time they'd both been to school in 22 months for my 5-year-old and ever for my 3-year-old. And it's like, you got to get to a place where you're giving them some stability too.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's really an option. I went over for the Spengler Cup, was there for 5 days, and it got canceled the morning of the tournament. So like literally, I was in Davos. I scrambled to get home, missed Christmas. So at this point, no, I could have stayed in Switzerland and signed with Ambry and stayed, but it just, I don't want to be away anymore. Like as a sober guy, PD, I can tell you, like I spent too long building my family back up to a place to go and leave. I'm just not there anymore. So I think I'm not sure if I'm done, but I'm going to try and play, but I want to play in North America.
You say as a sober guy and I'll just say this, Riv and I were just talking about your first game back. And I remember going on the air the next day. We did a live show that we're not doing anymore, but by our choice, just so you know. But I remember going on the air the next day, and I remember just I got so emotional. Riv wasn't on the show that day. I can't remember why. I think he was traveling for hockey, coaches youth hockey. And I was doing the show with a gentleman by the name of Paul Hamilton, who works for actually these guys right here, WGR 550. They're, and we started talking about your story, and I just started. I don't have the same story you do as to why I'm sober and all that stuff. Obviously, we all have our different paths, and I'm happy to share mine with you too. But I remember going on the air that day, and I remember getting so choked up, and it had nothing to do with me sharing about my sobriety. It was your story. It was, and I even knew your story about your childhood, which I don't know how comfortable you are and how much you talk about that or still talk about it or whatever, want to talk about it. But man, I was so emotional. I was so happy for you. I was so happy for you.
Yeah.
And I was so happy that I kind of had a little connection to you through my brother, because my brother and I had talked about it and texted about it. But I can tell you, like, you coming clean about going to rehab and all this stuff and therapy, I have to imagine has helped a lot of people, and good on you for doing it. And I'm going to ramble on here because sobriety is a passion.
Can I cut in here? Like, everybody's
you're actually
right
fucking irrelevant right now, Rick.
Listen, you're making me irrelevant, but I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to chime into this. And I'm not I'm an emotional guy too. And I'm going to tell you this, and this is not a lie, that I remember calling Petey after I think it was the next game. And I had said, did you watch the Senators game last night? This is literally one of the most mind-blowing, situations that I've watched in a long time. And I'm going to tell you right now, you got to stab me in the eye with a pencil to get me watch the Ottawa Senators play, because I'm not a big fan. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm a Northern Ontario boy. I don't like the Leafs and I don't like the Senators. I played for the Montreal Canadiens right there. And it was painful to watch them. But I'm going to tell you this. I watched the game for one reason, and that was Bobby Ryan. I wanted to see, I'm like, man, this guy's been out, some struggles. He's coming back. And I was watching to see like how you would do. And if you would like score that goal, because I know sometimes when you get in those situations, okay, and you come back and you're charged, you're like an elite player, okay? Like your statistics throughout your career are pretty damn impressive. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder if he's going to rise to the occasion and just bury one. And then all of a sudden you buried one. And it was a sick goal too. Jumps into the glass. All the boys are there. This is great. And I'm just like, I'm like sitting at home. I'm like, holy shit, man. Like, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden.
And the one goal was more than enough, eh? Like, all you needed was like, that was. Home. Yeah.
It was an absolutely sick goal, right?
Because you weren't, no offense, you had one goal in 16 games up until that point?
It was something like that. It wasn't nothing impressive at that point.
Well, for a fourth liner like me, it was impressive, but for a guy that's making $7 million, you're right.
I know.
Yeah, no.
So then all of a sudden you score that second one. And now all of a sudden the goosebumps on the arms are going up. And you know what I'm thinking? I don't know if everybody's thinking this, but I'm like, holy shit, man, this guy needs a hat trick. This guy needs a hat trick so bad. Like, come on, boys, get him the hat trick, set him up.
I gotta be like, and I realize I'm talking to a fighter and a defenseman here, but you ever like, you just know, right? Some nights, like you just have that feeling. And I knew in warm-ups, I was like, fuck, I feel good. Like something like I got this jump that I haven't had in a while. I knew the crowd was going to help. But you almost don't want to have too much energy either, because then you're just running. So I was like, all right, you got to control this a little bit. And I scored the first one, and then I fought at the end of that period.
That's right.
Yeah. So I got split for like a bunch of zips, and I'm in there getting it, and I'm like fucking shaking. And I was like, I got 2 more periods to play. Like I thought the night was over. I was like, I'm out. Just shut it down. And then, I got the, obviously that was probably the hardest night of my sobriety early on, because you're just, and Petey, like when you're going through early sobriety and you're going through the ups and the downs, it's fucking, everything's a grind. And that's about as high as you can get there after a hat trick. So I remember getting home and like, number one, the text, and you're trying to get back to people. And I remember like just being like, get me to bed so that I don't go anywhere or do anything. Like I was trying not to ride that high too much, but it's been a couple of years now since then, but I'm never going to forget that night. I'm really never going to forget it. It was incredible.
Well, that's a night where normally for guys that like to hang out, party, have some beers, where you're hitting the bar to go, right? I had an assist or I had a good fight. I was out of the bar celebrating. You know what I mean? That's a celebratory night. You should have seen the night after the Ottawa brawl. I hit every bar in Buffalo, but what was that like? How hard was it to stay on the straight and narrow after a night like that, where it's a celebratory evening?
Yeah, I think normally it would have been for sure. Oh, well, it would have been. I don't think I know. Normally I would have, but at that point anyway, I was still married with kids. So I would have been home with a bottle of wine. It's not like it would have been, life changes and you go from being downtown in the Byward Market to being at home with your wife and kids anyway. But yeah, I would have drank and celebrated that at home.
You would have cracked open a nice 1980 something, right?
We'd have been throwing something back for sure. Yeah. So, I just remember being so worn out. Like it was just, all this pressure to get back to playing and then to do that. And like, I remember getting home, it was 11:30 and I was just like, gave my wife a hug and was like, get me to bed, like, please. Because that's the thing people forget. No matter how high it gets, like, you got to turn around and be at the rink in 9 hours. You're going right back, and they don't give a shit what you did last night when they show the video. So, I think you learn for me anyway, I learned how to kind of deal with those situations. And previously had no idea how to deal with anything, still learning though, for sure.
So when you went into the NHL substance abuse program, like when did you realize that there was an issue, that there was a problem that needed to be addressed?
I think I knew beforehand. Well, I don't think I know. I knew I was just doing, and I was white knuckling, I guess you could call it, where I'm like, nah, no, you're just going to stop drinking. And then all of a sudden you're home and you're cooking dinner with your wife and you're having a bottle of wine cooking and you're having another while dinner is going on. And you're just like, whack. Like, I just couldn't get off that cycle. And for me, I wasn't like, there's so many different types of alcoholics and drinkers that, like, for me, it wasn't an everyday thing. It was just the no faucet thing. Like, I couldn't turn the faucet off once I started. And that was, we were in Detroit to play. The guys went out. They all went to the football game. I had some errands to run. So I did my thing, met up with the guys after. And, the night just turned ugly for me. Everybody else went home, but I didn't. And I just woke up in the morning. I was like, if I don't go now, I'm going to chalk this up to another bad day and hungover day in the NHL where you grind through practice and you deal with it afterwards. But I was like, I can't do this one more day. And luckily have never really had to again.
So, playing in the National Hockey League, it seems like, what you just described to me right now, it kind of seemed like 75% of the players that I've played with.
Yeah.
You go home, have a couple, a few bottles of wine, it's like an everyday thing, for a lot of these players. But you're saying that, like, when did it start affecting the lifestyle? When did it start to really, where you knew that this is just not a something that I'm doing as an enjoyable glass of wine here and there, but it's becoming a lot more than that?
Honestly, probably 2 years before that, where I had a couple look in the mirror moments for myself and was like, you got to get better at this. And then, you guys know how it goes. You're like, last night got away from me. And then you chalk it up to a bad night and you don't deal with it. Wife's mad at you. You're on the couch. You're doing this and that. And you're like, yeah. But then you get back into the bed and you're like, everything's good. You go another month and you do it again and again. Like, over time, it just adds up. And I think I was doing that for a long period of time, probably a good 2 years before I was like, before my wife and I were like, you got to figure this out. Like, there's no good end in sight when you're doing it once a month, the way I was doing it.
Yeah.
There's just no good end.
I want to ask you, just like, so going back to that first game back, how did you prepare? I mean, how long were you in rehab for? What did you do there to stay ready to play, if anything? And then how long did you have to prepare to get ready to come back and play when you were out?
So I think this will be like my only grievance with the whole process. And like, we're watching Carey Price go through the process right now, where I thought I was going for 30 days to where I went in California. And then I thought I was going to get back, and my goal wasn't to play right away. I was like, I'll have to practice, right? And I'll have to earn my way back. I understand that. But I got back and it was like the most isolating part of it was like, you can't travel, you can't skate, you can skate, excuse me, but you can't skate with the team. You're on your own. So like, I had to go through like 70 something days of that just to get back to playing. And it was like, okay, after 2 weeks of this, you can clear another hurdle to get to this. And then it was just like,
wow.
It felt like I was just jumping through hoops for a long period of time, and I couldn't get an answer from anybody. I felt like the NHL was telling me one thing, the coaches were telling me one thing, and the GM was telling me another. And, my agent's having direct conversations with my team. And I just like, I left in the end of November, got back for Christmas to my home in Ottawa with the family, and then didn't play till the end of February, I want to say, maybe even early March. And it was like 2 months of just like with zero answers. I'm like, you guys literally diagnosed me as a person that struggles with inconsistency, no set routine, and you are giving me no information. That would be my only.
Yeah, it's enough to drive somebody to drink, Bobby.
So you were.
That's enough. That right there is enough to make somebody crack.
Oh, dude, it was so hard because I was like, I had to pee in a cup every morning, right? So I like what wasn't going to be an issue, but at the same time, I was like, everything that you have helped me diagnose and like learn about myself, and I think it's probably by design, but I was like, you're testing me in every sense of this word right now. Like you're giving me no answers. And they're like, well, we don't want you around the team. We don't want the media there. I get back to Ottawa and they're like, we scheduled you ice. And it was during the Bell Capital Cup at the local rink. So like I'm walking through the front door with, a bunch of peewee and squirt teams and going to different locker rooms. I was like, you just told me you don't want me in front of people, but you threw me in the biggest, minor league hockey tournament in the world at the Bell Capital Cup. And we're at the same rink right now. That was a shit show. But I got in great shape. I got ready. And then the team, the strength and conditioning coaches were awesome. They took time out of their day every day to meet me, as opposed to, the guys would go on the ice at one place. They'd come over, work me out and get me on the ice. So I had all the tools at my disposal. It was just, it was 100 days of that.
How was the 30 days? I don't know if you want to speak about this or the process, but how was the 30 days where you had to leave, obviously your family, your teammates, and go and spend basically a month in another state and know that you're trying to get better, and how was the process of all of that for you?
It was excuse me, it was good. It was, I think I don't know if you did this, Petey. I don't know if you did 30 days or anything. For me, it was, you have a lot of gut checks in a short period of time, right? So it's very humbling. But like immediately when I get there, you're in a place where, people are going in for different reasons. You have people that drink too much wine like me, or you have people that are serious users that are going in and detoxing for the first 5 days. So when I got there immediately, I had to really ask myself if I was supposed to be there. Your level of alcoholic or user is so much more than mine, but we're the same. And you have to get to a place where you're comfortable saying that, right? Like, and it took me a good 2 weeks to get to that place. And then after that, you can kind of get some enlightenment. You can kind of learn a little bit more about what's really plaguing you, I think, if I'm using the right words there. But it was, at the end of the day, you're in Malibu, so it's gorgeous. The weather's great. You're outside, you're in the fresh air, you're doing meetings, you're exposed to everything in a short period of time. So I guess my answer to your question would be like, it was cathartic for me. I had to learn about myself a lot more. And then I had to really get to the issues of why. And that's hard. When you get to the issues of why, that's the hardest part.
Well, I've heard, I didn't do rehab, but I've heard they tear you down, lay everything out on the table, literally just gut you and talk about everything individually, literally.
Yeah, you get to a point where you're in the fetal position crying and you can't figure out. And then you're like, well, they're going to bring you back in an hour. They're going to tell you why you're doing that, right? Like you get extremely exposed. And I had some conversations in rehab that I had never had and probably needed to have for 20 years for me, right? When you go back and touch on all the family stuff, I had some questions that I needed answers to that I wasn't getting. And then you find them, I guess.
Well, I don't think you ever put closure on your upbringing. And I'll talk about that because a lot of substance abuse begins with childhood, and your childhood was, pardon my French, fucked up, man. It's messed up, and, what, how, I guess, how much of that did you realize played a factor in what was going on with you?
It was all of it. Yeah, it was the biggest factor, and what you said is 100% accurate. It always goes back to something in your childhood or something that you experienced but didn't process or deal with. And my mom, and for me, it all came to a head. My daughter was born. She's 5 now, 5.5. My daughter was born and my mom died 6 weeks later. Right. So this was like this, she met her and then she passed, but the last couple of weeks were hospice. So like my relationship was strained enough as it was with my mom, and I had questions to ask, but then you don't get to ask them because you're dealing with death instead. Right. You're just in this weird limbo situation. And I never got the closure that you want to get from that. Because how are you going to get it at that point? Right. You're just, I guess you're just surviving, but you're not dealing with anything. And like, daughter born, mom dies, 2 years later, a little guy comes on, and like all these different life scenarios, you're on the 16th fairway of a career, give or take, and you're winding it down. You're not playing to the $7 million contract you have. And like all these things were just this perfect tornado that like I escaped with the wrong way. Like we've all escaped in different ways. I escaped with it, tragically into a bottle of wine, because you're looking for answers that you think you're going to get when you're half a bottle of wine deep, and you're like, I'm really profound right now. You're like, fuck, I got all the answers right now, but you got,
it's when you wake up in the morning and you're all foggy and you're saying, I don't have the answers anymore.
Well, and it's even worse because you can't remember the conversation with yourself. So you're like, shit, I got.
So you dip into the bottle of wine again that night to try to have that same conversation again.
Yeah. It's exactly what I was doing. And just, it's nice. I don't think you ever, like you said, you never get closure, but you learn to get comfort. I guess if that makes some sense. So I feel better about where I'm at now than I ever have.
So what's your relationship like with your father?
We're good. We're good. We talk every day. I got 5 and 3 are my kids, and he doesn't leave. He's very set in his ways. He's a South Jersey guy. He's not leaving South Jersey. So don't see him as much as we should by any means. I don't go back to Jersey. I don't think there's any reason to ever really go back to Jersey. If you guys have been there, you understand. But we're good. I'm looking at my phone because it just texted me. So we're good. I don't think we're as close as you should be, but and I don't think we ever will be, but we're certainly good.
How much of your upbringing, and I don't know how much you talk about it or get into it, but how much of that helps you with your parenting now?
Quite a bit. But I mean,
because you mentioned stability for your kids just in regard to COVID. And I mean, you're a kid who's family, quick synopsis for people listening who might not know the exact story. I mean, you're running from the law. Your father was a top 10 most wanted in the United States. Is that right? And again, like I don't want to harp on that part of your story, because, where you've come since then is the bigger story for me anyway. But I mean, you talk about stability for your kids. I mean, I got to imagine that do you still reflect on those things and think, man, I got to do this for my kids. I got to do this for my kids. I got to provide this for my kids. I mean, how does it work into your day-to-day life?
Not as much, because I work to not make it part of my, I guess, day-to-day life and my decision making. And like, I've learned that I have certain triggers, and if I go too far down that rabbit hole, I get to a place where I got to really work to get out of it, like mentally. But I mean, because my story has been so wide open that, like, I talk about it all the time, and I'm comfortable going there. I just have to realize that there's places that you don't tread in that, in that story for me that I have to get out of. Going back to kids, like I was raised. I think ultimately as parents, you have an obligation to teach your kids a few things, and one of them's manners. And like, I was given that by my dad in spades, like the certain fabrics that is right and wrong. I got a very good moral compass on because of my dad, regardless of all the stuff that happened outside of that. Right. Those foundations were there. So I rely on those foundations every single day. Where I think for me as a parent, you have to differ between what I got. It was very militaristic, I guess, in a sense for me. It was hockey, and like my dad was, my dad's like, if there's a goal, we're doing everything correctly. It was 4 a.m. on the, wake up, go to the rink before hockey. or before school, doing all this stuff. I don't think, and that's where I changed, is where I'm like, I got to be a little more lenient than I think my dad was in that sense.
Now, was that schedule
trying?
Was that schedule? Obviously, your dad knew that you were a very upper echelon player. He saw something special in you at a young age, didn't he?
I think he did. Yeah. I honestly, I probably should ask him at what point he knew, but I don't think he knew. I just think he realized if he's going to try.
When did you know?
I don't think I knew until I was, a Pee-wee Bantam player. And all of a sudden and you guys have been through this, because that difference happens at that age where the best players all of a sudden are the smaller players, and now they're getting hit. So that changes. And like, I was always kind of the middle of the road, through Pee-wee and Bantam. And then you start to see the game change, and I just stayed where I was on that path, and everybody veers off and goes different ways. And, even on our Pee-wee and Bantam team, I don't think I was the best player. I think I was one of them, but, as you keep going to the next level, you're like, okay, something's now separating you from these guys. You're putting up the same points that you're doing here, and you're putting up more and more where these guys are falling off. And that's, yeah. So I was always on that curve, but I had a different work ethic. I was homeschooled. I was at the rink every day. And my dad taught me a program that worked. So I just kept on that program. And yeah.
What was you got drafted to the Owen Sound Attack. What were you drafted?
7th overall, I think.
7th overall? Yeah. All right.
7th overall.
It's not bad.
Well, so I wasn't going. I had like
he was being sarcastic,
No, I had zero interest in the OHL. I was committed to Michigan. As an American player, like, that's where you want to go. You want to go to school. But I remember Saginaw was picking first that year, and Saginaw was like, will you come watch a game? I said, yeah, sure. I was playing for Honeybake, drove up, and they lost like 11-1. I was like, this is, you're picking first overall. I get it. Now I know why, but I'm not going there. So I emphatically said no. Like, I would have been the first overall pick.
Who was the first overall that year?
It ended up, I actually remember this. It ended up being Patrick McNeil, who ended up being, I think he was a 5th round pick of Washington. Really good junior player, really good. And he played some pro, some Hershey stuff, and had a nice career for himself, like carved out a nice career. But there was like 9 guys that they were trying to go first overall, and nobody would go, like nobody. So I like to say I was the first overall pick of the 9 that said no. I'll
give you a quick story about Owen Sound. Owen Sound was picking 2nd overall my year. They did the exact same thing. Owen Sound Platers, I think they were called at the time.
Yeah.
And we got a call, and they wanted me to go there at 2nd overall. And my dad said, absolutely not.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I was like the first guy that actually went up there. I mean, you probably heard the saying like that, and that was a saying in the OHL. It was like, you fuck around, you end up in the Sound. Like, nobody wanted to go there. So they took
what a shithole, man.
Oh man, I went up there and I was like, I'm not coming here. There's no way. And then you get to know the community a little bit, and it ended up being the best thing I've ever done going there. But I figured I'd be a 5th or 6th round pick, because that's how teams do it for American players. They just take you, hold your rights or whatever. And then they called me and were like, we took you 7th overall. Will you at least come look? And I got there, and I was there for a weekend, and I was floored by how much I needed to be in a place like that for where I was in my life. And my mom needed to be in a place like that too, right? Because she came with me the first year, and we were like, the first year was, hockey terms, it was okay. It was up and down, but it was like, we took a breath, my mom and I, for the first time in years going up there. So it ended up changing my life around, and it was a good place for me to be. But yeah, when guys call me to ask about it, I'm like, can you not go to London? Is London on the board? But it's like, what a community though. The people are incredible.
So when did you
say that?
When you get to Owen Sound, how old were you? 16?
16. Yeah.
So you get to Owen Sound, you're the 7th pick overall. Was there any kind of hype about you? Because now there's hype about kids 3, 4, 5 years before their draft. Was there any kind of hype about Bobby Ryan? Because I mean, you went 2nd overall in the NHL draft. About you being not even drafted in the NHL, but like a 1st round pick?
There was a lot. Yeah. And it was, the buzz was something that I hadn't experienced because you guys have to remember at this point, I had played 1 year for Honeybaked where the buzz is changing and getting more and more in your face, I guess would be the way to put it. But before that, I played for 3 years in LA with the Junior Kings, and we were the best team in the country, and we were going to all these places and shit kicking teams. But you get back to California, nobody cares, right? So you don't realize what's in front of you, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into Honeybaked, committed to the program, committed to Michigan, and then you veer away from all that and go to this, this league that has media, has all these different things, and I was overwhelmed for sure. And I remember I scored in my second or third, and then I got suspended for jumping a guy. And you'll have to discern for yourself, but apparently I kept beating him after he said no. So I got suspended for 3 games, and I'll never forget. That was like my wake up call to media and Canada. Being suspended like that was like, holy shit, this is, now you're essentially a pro. You got to learn how to learn. You got to learn how to live with it.
So let's fast forward. What was the pressure like in your draft year?
It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was immense. And because.
Is that because of Crosby? He was taking all the stardom?
I was going to say that had something to do with it, but we were really fortunate to play or be drafted into a year where the lockout was going on that you guys lived through in 2005. So we were, I think if it weren't for Crosby, I don't think we would have had a draft. I think we would have been picked online, or virtually. That's kind of where we were at, but they had to throw this together so that he could walk the stage and get the pictures. Because I got drafted in an Ottawa ballroom with 20 people, right? There was only 20 players at our draft. It was thrown together within a week. So I was really fortunate that the NHL lockout, where guys were playing, we all just kind of flew under the radar all season long. So nothing ever felt like it was paramount or in front of me from a draft standpoint.
Tell me this, and then we'll move on to your NHL career. Brian Burke, in his interview, he said he had heard such great things about you and your character and your personality before you walked into his meeting. And he said, first of all, did you watch the thing that Sportsnet did about you and your family? The Secret Life of Bobby Ryan. Did you end up watching that?
I did. I watched it. Yeah. Only because I love Christine Simpson, who ended up being the person that I've always really enjoyed working with her. And she was really delicate with how she did it and approached my parents with it. So I did watch it just to, I guess, support her in some way, I guess.
Yeah.
But I did watch it. Yeah.
She's fantastic. And she did fantastic work on that project. But Brian Burke was interviewed in there, and he said he wanted you to fail his meeting. He wanted you to come in, and what was that like going into Brian Burke? Did you know anything about him? And then, what was that meeting with him like?
Very intimidating. I remember there was very few rooms that I went into that I was like, I don't want to be here. But that was one of them, because I was just intimidated by Brian Burke. He's got the fucking half tie on, and he was, this is 20 years ago. So he's got the hair slicked back. He was looking good, and he was hard. And the questions were, he was fair, but he was critical. I think they want to get a rise out of you in some sense. But I had made up my mind going into all those meetings leading up to the draft. I was like, I got nothing to hide. So if you're going to ask about family, I'm going to be honest. And I've always been very self-reflective of myself in the hockey sense. So I was able to be critical. And they're like, you don't skate very well. I'm like, but I'm still in the conversation. Do you
remember a question that kind of?
Yeah.
Is that what you said to him? I don't. Yeah, but I'm still in the conversation to be number 2 overall or something. Is that what you said?
I said I'm still in the room. We're still having this conversation. So you can get better at skating, right? But you can't teach a guy how to play the game or think the game. You can teach the fundamentals, and you can get better. And I don't know if I ever actually got better at skating. If I'm being completely honest, I got a little less Bambi-like as my career went on, but you're going into these meetings and you almost have to be, if you want to be appealing, you almost have to be cocky or arrogant, or, you have to come off as saying, I can do all the things you want me to do, but here I am, here's what I have to work with. You have to make the pick, not me. And that's the way I approached it. And I think we had a great conversation because of it.
Riv, I know you have a question, so just ask it after this, but I got a quick story for you, Bobby. In those meetings, I was ranked late first, second round. I knew I was going to be a second rounder. Oh, that's extremely confident. I mean, I could have slipped, but I was confident I was going in the second round, at least. and I went 34th overall. But I remember I went into a meeting with Tampa Bay because they were picking first overall. They took LeCavalier, and they weren't going to take me obviously first, but who knows where they could get me, second round, third round, whatever, right? So they were interviewing everybody, and they said, if you were the Tampa Bay Lightning, where would you draft Andrew Peters? I said, I'd draft him number 1 overall. Right?
Yeah, right.
Well, I've got no chance going number 1 overall, right? But then I went into like I think it was Boston, and Boston's like, where would you take Andrew Peters? And I said, right where, I take him wherever you're picking, or maybe it was Pittsburgh at 24 or something. And, I said, I'd take me in the first round. I said, but just so you know, when I go to Detroit in 10 minutes, I'm telling them the same thing. That's exactly what I said to him. Right. I mean, what have you got to lose? Go ahead, Riv. This is the most questions Rivs has ever had too.
Oh, I can't remember. I think I was going to ask you, I remember being in those interviews. And I remember being like, I think back about how young and immature you are, or at least I was. So immature, so nervous about all of that and answering all those questions. I was just wondering, was there a certain team that you sat down with and that they'd asked you a question where it raised your eyebrows, put a smile on your face, and just was like, what the heck?
I remember, I guess I wouldn't remember a team, but I remember a certain meeting where, and there's always one story every year that comes out where they're like, they asked me to do this, where they put your thumbs down on the table and they put up a glass of water on it, and they want to see how you solve the problem. And I didn't have to do any of that, but I remember and I can't remember I want to say it was Florida, but please don't, commit me to that. But they put like a worksheet in front of me and were like, fill this out. And I was like, I was just fucking done. Cause the meeting's 25 minutes, right? You have 7 minutes and then you go sit and do the whole thing over again. So you do 15 on day 1, 15 on day 2, if you're a high first round pick. And I just remember it was like meeting 12 of the day. And I was like, no, I'm just fucking out. I'm done. I was like, I've done the same thing. Like, right now, I feel like I'm a shitty hockey player because I've had to go through my weaknesses with every team, and I'm going to be a top 5 pick. Like you're like, right? That's
like you're picking. I'm looking at the draft right now. You're picking 20th. I'm not even going to be there.
I remember the night before the actual draft, and this ended up being a life-changing thing for me too. Brian Burke says to me on my way out, "I'm picking you 2nd overall tomorrow," and I said, "Okay." That was it, right? I was done. But Columbus was picking 5th or 6th, and they had asked me to come in and do a late night interview with their, psychologist. I was already 2nd overall. I knew it, but I had made this commitment to this meeting. So, immediately, and then I had to drive through downtown Ottawa to go to a different hotel. So I was fucking livid that I had to go. And I remember calling my dad and Bobby Clark, who's been, a pretty central figure in my life and decision-making and things. And my dad said, "You don't have to go." And I remember saying to Bobby Clark, I said, "I made the commitment, I'm going to go." And he said, "That's exactly what I would want to hear from you." Like that was right. You're still going to this thing. And she's talking, and I sat down with her and I said, "Listen, I'm going 2nd overall tomorrow. Brian Burke already told me, you want to get into some shit?" And we ended up having a life conversation at 18 years old. And I worked with her throughout my entire career, still have a great relationship with her. She was one of the first people I called when I got sober and needed help. And that meeting ended up being a central part of my life, but you don't know that you're going to get that from the night before the draft. Right. So it was, kind of a roundabout search.
That's incredible.
Story. So yeah, it really was. That's
incredible. How was Brian Burke after you made it, after you got to Tampa, but to Anaheim, and after you just started coming up through the ranks?
Fuck, he was hard on me, man. And I say that knowing it was great for me, but he was hard because there was all this. Sidney Crosby was able to step right in. There's generational players. We all know that. Picks 2 through 5 outside of, Pricer's had a long career, but like a lot of guys didn't play. Guys just don't play very long. Right. So you have this idea in your mind that you're going to step right in at 18 years old. And I wasn't going to do that, especially with a team that was a cup contender like Anaheim was. They ended up winning the cup 2 years later. how the fuck was I going to make that team? So I had a lot of pressure in my own mind to get there and stay there. Ended up missing my entire first camp with a shoulder injury. And then he was hard on me all the way up. And I'll never forget, I led the team in preseason points, but didn't make the team. Said, we're sending you to Iowa. Iowa? Like Des Moines was where I went. And he goes, if I don't have you back within a month, I will trade you to get you in the league. Because you're an NHL player at this point. Went down to Iowa, had a great attitude. Brian Burke stepped down. Right? like didn't like left the Ducks organization. So I'm just sitting there going, holy fuck, like what am I doing? Bob Murray ended up being my first full-time GM, called me up the next day, and I never went back. But yeah, Berkey's like, I'll get you up here while all this, and then steps down and leaves and goes to Toronto. And I was like, you're left holding your hat going, am I ever going to play in this league? That's how I felt at the time. But yeah, he was hard on a young guy.
Question.
Go ahead, River.
So for me, I retired from hockey at 37, knew kind of a year or two leading up to that the body was starting to take its toll. And it was tough. Mm-hmm. I didn't miss the game of hockey. Not whatsoever.
Yeah.
I missed the trainers. I missed the players, the teammates that I'd played with. I missed that routine of going to the rink every single day, being told when to get on a bus, when to get on an airplane, what time, curfew was, everything was structured for us. Even in the off season, you had your training, everything was planned out. Then it stops. And I mean, it stops just like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I had a tough time. I had more, the hardest thing I dealt with is dealing with no routine.
Yeah.
I didn't miss the game of hockey. I did so much, and I enjoyed everything about my career, but I missed the routine. It was tough. Now you're at home, you're trying to figure out what the next part of your life is what you're going to be doing with it, right? Because you have a long life to live after that. Have you put any time into, now I know you want to continue to play and hopefully that you'll find something that you can enjoy because you've made some really good money throughout your career. And what is Bobby Ryan going to be doing in 5 years from now? Do we have any idea of what you want to do? Do you want to be involved with hockey? There's a lot of hockey players that I know that just want to step away. They don't want anything to do with it. And then there's the ones that literally drive right back into it because they want to coach. They want to, be some part of, an organization. What do you want to do?
So now the questions that I think you have to ask yourself when you're done are the ones that I'm like, you're being forced to confront right now. For me anyway, I'm being forced to confront because all of a sudden you're like, maybe you don't get to play out on your own terms. Right. So like, I'm dealing with that. Maybe I have played my last game and I don't know it. Like, I don't think you ever quite know. I do know that I had some offers to teach hockey and get right back into the certain organizations maybe, or coach youth hockey here in Nashville. And I've tried to be really, really slow about where I go because I don't want to jump into something that maybe doesn't make sense for me long-term, but then you made a commitment and you have to see it through. 5 years from now, I think I'll be in some capacity a coach for sure. That's where I start to see myself heading. Don't ever want to coach a program or a team, but I want to help kids in skill development. That's kind of where I'm going to find myself.
Why don't you bring a USHL team to Idaho?
We got the Coeur d'Alene. Yeah, Coeur d'Alene needs a program. They have a hockey academy because Gretz is right across the street over there, right? So he's got his hockey academy up here, and then Russ Cortnell's up here. There's so many hockey players in this area. Right here.
Really?
Oh, it's packed, man. Yeah. Well, you probably heard of Gaza Ranch, right? Where?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I sold my place there because it earned me a one-way ticket to Malibu. I was like, I can't live here. I cannot live in this golf course community. But I sold that one, and now I'm about 20 miles south of there in a different golf community, and it's more of a family feel, quiet one. But yeah, there's 20 hockey guys up here for sure.
What was Sheldon Surrey one of them?
Yeah. Shelly's got a place over at Gaza as well.
Do you know him at all?
We played together in Anaheim. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right.
He took me to my first ever AA meeting back in the day.
Wow.
But, and this was leading up to before I had gone. I remember I called Shelly and was like, I think I need to have a conversation and maybe look in the mirror a little bit here. And I did, and he took me to a meeting, and I wasn't ready to be there yet, if that makes sense. I was in the room and I was so fucking itchy and uncomfortable, and it was humbling, but I wasn't ready to have those conversations yet. So it's funny. Now I go back and reflect on that years later. But now I'm the king of those rooms.
Well, you have a hell of a story, and you're a polarizing figure. I mean, I just sit here and listen to you speak. I can't listen to many people speak. Like Riv, I got to cut him off after about 35 seconds. I could listen to you speak all day long. It's unbelievable. The question I have. Oh, you're welcome. The question I have is, Bobby, I look back and I mean, I'm very hard on myself about my career, whatever I made in the NHL, whatever. Okay. A lot of people would give their nuts to do what I did. And it is what it is. But I look back and I actually think about what was the most fun season I ever had. Not even in the NHL. Like, when was the last time hockey was fun for you? When was, because of the pressure of making $7 million, the pressure of making $5 million, the pressure of being a second overall pick, the pressure of being a seventh overall pick in the OHL, the pressure of being, playing for Honey Baked. I mean, you've had pressure on you your whole life. When was the last time hockey was actually fun for Bobby Ryan? And maybe it was fun the whole time you played in the NHL. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I got to refine it last year in Detroit from a fun standpoint, and I say that full well knowing that COVID in hockey that year was a shit show. Like, I mean, every single day you're getting tested. You're jumping through hurdles and hoops, and the fact that we got the season off at 56 games felt like a miracle. Even though you're playing just divisional games, but I got to really find the enthusiasm again that year, and I started the year really well. Had some injuries, and then I obviously had the big injury at the end. And it was a losing season, right, with Detroit. But it was a very pivotal year for me, I think, and I'll look at this for the rest of my life. It was a pivotal point for me as Bobby Ryan, the person, that I got to. I don't necessarily say I went out on my own terms, but I got to play hockey the way that I thought it should be played, and the respect for the game from my side of things was back. Took nothing for granted and enjoyed the season. So that was the most fun I've had in a long time. And I don't think I had fun in a long time in Ottawa because of where I was as a person. The year that we took our shot at the Cup, we ended up losing to Pittsburgh, who went on to beat Nashville in the conference finals. That was some of the most fun I had playing hockey. You
guys were one goal away, weren't you? Game 7, overtime?
Yeah. Chris Kunitz scored in Game 7.
Your old teammate in Portland, wasn't he?
Fuck. I never crossed paths with him in Portland, but I did in Anaheim. Yeah.
Oh, that's right, in Anaheim. Yeah, that's right. Hockey's a small world.
It certainly is, man. I'll have to tell you the story about my first pro hockey experience in Portland when I got there. That was eye-opening because they had 4 days off. Kevin Dineen sent them off on a bender, and I had just lost out in the OHL, flew down, and I'm like, eyes wide, just like, oh, here I am. This is it. This is pro hockey. And these guys were at the University of Maine for 4 days, and I got Dustin Penner doing they're wrestling. They're full on WWE wrestling in the middle of the locker room, so hungover and hammered. And I'm like, this is it. This is where I'm going. So, that was my first experience with Zen Konopka, Pierre Parento, Penner, Shane
O'Brien. Didn't Konopka break his ankle because they were wrestling in a hotel room or something that year? Or?
Yeah. I wasn't there for that or part of it, but yeah, that was it. And then we got all the way there, and JS Alban was our goalie, and he got hurt. He broke his ankle playing soccer pregame. So our starting goalie's out, broken ankle, and I mean, you got to be a non-fucking athlete to pull that off, for one, right? like, so he comes down and like, I thought he was just messing around. And then
I'm going to tell you this though, Bobby, if you played in the league long enough, you know that those soccer games before your NHL game that night, they can get heated.
But
those bloody Europeans are absolutely unbelievable, and they pick on us, the North American guys who look like we have 3 feet. And it's who was the guy that concussed himself before one of the games?
Maxi Afinoganov before a playoff game hit his head. He almost didn't play. Back in I can't remember what year that was, but.
So we touched on Eric Weinrich earlier. I'm in Portland, Maine playing, and he's behind the bench. He's a coach, right? First year outside of hockey. I get called up. I come back 3 weeks later, and he's in the lineup as a defenseman. He got unretired to play. And he basically said, I came back for the pregame soccer. That was all he was like, that's all I wanted to do was play pregame soccer. Couldn't stand behind the bench anymore. So he went from being a coach to a teammate very fast. It was nuts.
Who's your best friend from the NHL that you didn't know before you got there?
Oh man. Well, I guess Tyler Johnson, who's, he's a Coeur d'Alene kid. So he's from here. Never knew him. I had played against him for a few years, and then I moved in up here at Gaza, and he was buying a house. So he's become like an extension of our family now. He's my daughter's first boyfriend, and she chases him around, and he's become part of the family. So I think you, and you guys can tell me better, I think you start to establish who's going to be in the rest of your life pretty quickly after hockey. Because you get, you're having more conversations about that. And yeah, Tyler's one of those guys.
It's a great answer. I didn't, because you guys you said you never played together, right? Is that?
We never met him.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Never met him.
Very, very, who's been most supportive of your sobriety? I guess from your past playing days, and do you still keep in touch with Brian Burke at all?
I don't keep in touch with Burke, but I will say he reached out immediately to me when I was going through some of the hardest days. And he was very, very good to check on me. So it's hard to say who's the most supportive, because it's, you want to give a hockey answer, but I think if your direct partner and your wife isn't your most supportive, then you got a problem. And she certainly is, for me. In the hockey world, I got guys that check on me. In the early days, I talked a lot with Nate Thompson, a little bit with Sheldon, but as you get a little more comfortable with things, and the NHL reaches out to me all the time, right? Like as they're going to have to follow through on these things. But I don't think I have a direct person anymore from the NHL that worries about sobriety. But again, the same answer is going to be Tyler, because he's seen me at best and he's seen me at my worst, being up here at Gaza. So he's probably the guy that if I were in a real bind, that's what I'm calling about it.
Your silver medal still in a drawer somewhere?
I just saw it. I honestly, I was unpacking boxes. I just saw it. So it's in a bank little thing. It's like a bank envelope, and it's in the bottom drawer of it's in my closet, but it's certainly not front and center. It's not the right color to be exposed, right?
It's amazing because hockey players are so interesting like that, and we'll wind down here with you because I know we've been going a while, but hockey players are so interesting like that. I mean, you find some Austrian skier that has trained his or her entire life to get to the Olympics, and they would just kill for a bronze just to be on the podium. And here we are, hockey players, and it's like, gold medal or bust. Gold medal or bust. I mean, I have a friend who won a silver medal at the World Juniors, and I said, I don't even know where the medal is. He's like, he was on Team Canada, gold or bust, right? Gold or bust, and so I mean, do you not think there'll ever be a day where you can hang that up and say, "Holy shit, I won a silver medal at the Olympics"?
I think I'll get to that place eventually. Yeah. It's been 11 years now since 2010. And I think I've looked at that medal less than 10 times. it was always a conversation piece when people would come over. And then, back when I was drinking, we'd always be like, oh, you want to wear it? And then, we'd pull it out for that. It was like a ceremonious thing, but it's always just been in that drawer. And I think it's just the way we're conditioned, right? Like it's great to have a silver medal. And I look back at it and, I will look back at it fondly, but right now it doesn't feel like I won anything. So we didn't score the last goal of that game. So it feels like a loss. But as you get older and more contemplative of those things, I think I'll certainly get to a point where I appreciate it more.
Does not winning a Stanley Cup weigh on you at all?
Yeah, it does. I took a good chance at it in 2017, and I thought we were not the best team in those playoffs, but we might have been the best team in those playoffs, if you understand what I'm saying. And
yep.
If I'm done and I've played my last game, then that's something that's going to keep me up at night for sure. I think like anybody that's played knows that you get to that point where you're like, wait, I did everything right for a period of time. I did everything wrong for a period of time, but the wrong doesn't necessarily outweigh the right. You just didn't get to where you need to be and win that last game.
What was your favorite season in the NHL? What was your best season? And I'm not even talking statistics because I'm looking at your statistics right now. So I know what your best season is statistically, and maybe that is your best season.
Yeah, I would say probably back then, 2010. And I guess when you're talking about the NHL, I'm tying in that year with the Olympics. That was probably some of the best hockey I had played. I was in a great place in Anaheim. I loved our team. I think if we didn't have 8 Olympians, we have a different season that year. But we had 8 guys at the Olympics. And I remember playing the gold medal game, and then Tuesday night, on Sunday, and then Tuesday night, you're driving to play the Colorado Avalanche. So fuck it. Like, really, like that's how I felt. You went from, one extreme to the other. I remember, and we wasted a lot of time coming back from those Olympics and kind of lost our place and didn't end up making the playoffs. But we were a very, very good hockey team that year. And that was probably my favorite season.
Was there a healthy rivalry there, US, Canada, between you and Getzlaf?
With Getz, I had a 3-way there with Getz, Peters, and Scotty.
Perry, yeah.
I forgot all about Perry. Yeah.
So I will give them all credit. They didn't. We didn't talk about the game one time. Never did they bring the game up until the video started with the silver and whatever those comedic things we did at the end of the season. That ended up going viral. But they never brought the game up. We honestly shook hands. It was really, really weird because then you're playing on the line with them, right? With Getz and Paris. So you're, within 48 hours, you're going against them for the biggest game of your life. And then you're playing Colorado Avalanche 48 hours later and you're on the team and you're trying to figure something out together to work. But it was a very different experience.
Coolest. Two questions. One is fun. One's not. Coolest thing you bought besides a house, besides a car, coolest thing you own that you bought that you had to have when you're playing in the NHL? Like maybe it's a piece of sports memorabilia, maybe like coolest thing you bought.
It's such a bad answer. I got nothing. I've never, I guess maybe vacations would be that's it. That's, experiences and stuff, but I've never been, I guess the word would be materialistic, but I've never splurged on anything like that. Just wasn't my thing.
Just one of those fucking Pelotons back there, eh?
That's bad. There you go.
Hey?
I'm a big believer, though. I am a big believer in it right now.
Oh, my wife fuck off. If you can't ride a bike without someone yelling, some digital person yelling at you, you shouldn't be on it.
It's not about the pressure. It's about if you're going to ride the bike for 45 minutes and you're going to grind it out, you might as well have a rocket staring you back and telling you what to do. Right?
Last question.
I wish I had a better answer for that last one though.
No,
I'm going to text you something later.
You know what? To me, that's probably, in all honesty, it's an admirable answer because
you have something in mind that why would you ask the question? Did you have something in mind that
I don't know, like maybe he had a guitar collection and he bought like old guitars from a band member for some band that he loved, or I don't know, like stuff like that. Like I always think like if I'm making $7 million a year, like shit, my house would be, decked out in toys. But what advice?
I got nothing.
What advice would you?
I should. Actually,
go ahead.
Okay, so
go ahead.
I still have it. It's all locked up now and behind gated key that I can't get to. But I was a major wine collector, so I had $250,000 worth of wine, and then I stopped drinking. So if anybody wants to buy it, let me know. But I sell.
I don't know how that thumbs up is happening there, but that's not for me. But yeah, you know what? I give you a thumbs up on that. You listen. Wine is like major league. There's a documentary about you probably got, have seen it, where like this guy spent he bought like 500,000 bottles, and like they were all kind of fake or something too, right?
They were fake. Yeah. The bottom fell out on the guy. He spent a ton of money, but yeah, I built a 1,600 bottle cellar over at Gaza Ranch, and then stopped drinking and sold the house. And now I got the wine and nowhere to put it. So it's all locked up. But
you couldn't have mixed that into the sale price, eh?
No. So I ended up selling to a very famous person that's not hockey related. And I did try, and they had no interest.
Last question I'll ask you, and we'll let you go. And this has been absolutely incredible. I want you to know that this has been amazing. What advice would you give somebody who is struggling with substance abuse?
So I think I got to a place where I was very automated with this response, because people were asking me, a year ago. And I honestly, I think I get the question a lot, but I got automated with the response, and then I think it lost a little bit of the effect. But when you need to ask for help, and this is what I learned, and this is my experience, you need to have one very hard conversation. That's it, right? That's it. You have to have one very hard conversation where you say, I have a serious problem, and I am powerless over whatever it may be. My advice to people would be like, you got to get very, very comfortable with being uncomfortable for a little bit. That's where you have to get to. You have to be okay with being exposed, raw, vulnerable. Because I think for us as men and hockey players, you're conditioned to be strong and in front of things. And when you want to get better or quit drinking, you have to turn it into a 180 from where you're at. So my advice to people is like, just have that one hard conversation, and the rest gets a lot easier. That's my advice.
I've always been a Bobby Ryan fan because my brother always spoke so highly of you. I became a much bigger fan of yours when it's unfortunate that you had to go through it, but the sobriety and the first game back and the hat trick and the fight, can't forget the fight. But today, chatting with you, how candid you are, how honest you are, how intelligent you are. Very proud to know you. Very proud to know you.
Thank you, man.
And very, very grateful for you coming on, and me being sober myself 10 years in May coming up. I'll say, you ever need anything, or you ever know anybody that needs somebody to talk to, I'd be honored if you ever had to reach out. So
thank you, man.
Know that
means a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
And I know I know Riv feels the same way. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just 10 years, man. I'm numbers that you hope to get to someday. So congratulations.
Well, you will.
You got to get there first. You get there first.
Yeah. Well, we just had Ryan Leaf on, and it's amazing, Bobby. I mean, like, I don't know, like I don't know if I wouldn't call it spiritual or what, but I mean, like, Ryan Leaf comes on and we're chatting, and he's telling his story, and
second overall pick,
and and I said, behind Peyton Manning, but
fucking bigger bust than me, maybe.
You weren't a bust. That's the thing. You were not a bust.
Talking about, man?
Like, you were not. Don't, if you think you were a bust, then you're crazy. But like I said, May 15th, I'll be 10 years. He said, May 15th. That's my birthday. And it's like, and I'm just kind of like, and I just remember I got goosebumps. I was like, holy shit. Because secretly I was kind of embarrassed to always say it to someone, but I always said it to myself, and I might've said it to a few people, but I was like, my birthday's May 5th. I quit drinking after my 32nd birthday. And I can tell you that. So May 15th, I view it as like a rebirth day, and like, I never even said those words out loud. I don't even think I'd ever really said my date out loud, but when he said that, I was like, man, there's some kind of a power, a world power that's connecting that. I believe in that shit, man. I don't care if people roll their eyes right now. Fuck you if you're rolling your eyes, but
man, it's amazing. There's too many coincidences, excuse me, that you find, and I think you find those through recovery and meetings, and but yes, I wholeheartedly on the same idea as you. I believe in that, because it's weird how many times dates add up and things add up and something comes back to you.
Numbers, eh? Like, oh,
yeah.
I'm glad I'm not alone. I think that's the clarity, man. We're clear. We see it. That's the best part. See, Rivs is all foggy and shit over there.
Fuck, you just can't get to our wavelength, Riv.
Yeah. Sorry, man. Bobby, absolutely incredible, man. So grateful for you today. Thank you so much.
I'm glad we made
Bobby, it was a pleasure.
Reached out.
It was a pleasure, man.
Pleasure to meet you as well. I look forward to meeting you guys in person. Both of you guys.
Absolutely.
Same here. Yeah. I look forward to it. Thanks again, Bobby Ryan. That's a wrap on another episode of After the Whistle. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, After the Whistle, and at Craig Rivet 52, at the Instigator 76. And you can find us, as you already know, on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and anywhere else where you can get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to spread the word.